everyone. This is Fadi, and I hope that you have been enjoying all of the previous episodes of this video series on logical fallacies. And I hope also you will continue to watch not just today's episode, but even the upcoming ones. You are going to find these shows to be a helpful tool to you in your discussions with your Muslim friends. Maybe they're going to send you a basically YouTube debate. Maybe they're going to send you some quotations from some of their scholars. And if you read or listen to these kind of statements carefully, you're going to discover that there's a lot of presuppositions in there and arguments that are not based on any facts, and rather it's illogical, to be honest, when it comes to how they are presented. But many times your Muslim friends are really genuine about why they're sharing this with you. Maybe they believe it wholeheartedly. Maybe they trust their authority and they assume that that's really what is logical. And our job is to help correct these misunderstandings. We've covered a number of those logical fallacies. Today we're going to cover yet another one known as historical precedent. With us here in studio, as always, to unpack not just this particular one, but hopefully even future ones, is our dear friend and brother, Dr. J. Dr. J, welcome back.
Well, good to be back. Thanks again. This one, historical precedent, is a common one that Muslims do without even thinking it through. And what they'll say is, we can trust the Quran because it's much more recent. Therefore, it's better than that which has come earlier. It is, and they almost take the scientific theory, because in science we do understand that scientifically things do get better as more
technology.
Research. Yeah, research does and more discoveries, and so that which science of the first century is not the same as science of today. Science today is much better informed because we know so much more. And they assume that the same thing happens when it comes to revelation, or the same thing happens when it comes to historical fact. And so they say we can trust the Quran because it's more recent than the Bible, which is much older. So therefore, it has a much better idea, a much greater. We can trust the traditions because they unpack much better what God was doing all the way through history. And without thinking through how idiotic this sounds, they don't realize what a fallacy this is. When you see an accident that happens out here, let's say an accident happened out here on the road, what do the police do? They put up a sign there, and they say an accident happened on this date at this time. If you were an eyewitness to this, please call this number.
That's right. Yeah.
Why do they want eyewitness account? Because they want someone who was actually there.
Right.
They don't want someone who got it from somebody who got it from somebody who got it from somebody. And so this idea of something that comes much later takes precedent is so Islamic. It's built into their DNA. The law of abrogation, the chapter 2, verse 106, and chapter 16, verse 101, stipulate that which we give, which is mansukh. We give something better. So Allah gives something here in the beginning, but he gets something better in the end. They apply that to all of knowledge, they apply that to all of history, and they apply it to the Bible versus the Quran. That which we give the Bible, we give something better, the Quran. They apply that to even scripture. And so they think that therefore the Quran has precedence over the Bible because it comes later, and therefore it knows more. It's more scientific or whatever. Without thinking, no, historically speaking, the Bible takes precedence because it's much closer to the event. Just like when the police want eyewitness account. There was no eyewitness account in the Quran of the crucifixion, which is really probably the biggest problem between Christianity and Islam when it comes to historical event. The event of the crucifixion in chapter 4, verse 157 is very clear. There was no crucifixion. They thought it was so. Possibly another was given his image. That's what's in chapter 4, verse 157. And Muslims will say this is much more authoritative than the Bible itself when you have John at the foot of the cross, Matthew, who's watching it from a distance, all the disciples who knew what was happening, Mary, the mother of Jesus, she would know who her son is, and yet they don't go to that account. They go to one that was written, they say 600 years later. I would say 7 or 8 or even 900 years later. We are not even sure where chapter 5, verse 147 was actually introduced in the Quran. So they would take the later and say that it has precedence over the former. When in historically speaking, you never do that. It's always the other way around. The other thing is what we're now introducing now, and we're going to be introducing in some episodes yet to come, and that is the whole problem of everything we know about early Islam. about what Muhammad did, what Muhammad said, that's the CIRA and the Hadith, about how the Quran was to be understood, that's the tafsir, and about the whole history of mankind, that's the tahriq. Those 4 genres known as the Islamic traditions, they believe are much more authoritative than anything else that we have. And they always say that these are ones that were written by the Sahaba and the Tabi'un. These are written by the eyewitnesses and those who got it from the eyewitnesses. Now, the academics know this is not so. Even the Muslim academics know that all of these traditions were actually written in the 9th and 10th century, redacted back to the 7th century.
They have holes, right, in them?
They have all kinds of standard Islamic narrative holes. The standard narrative has, but we're going to find out that they're not even 200 to 300 years later. They're 400 to 900 years later. 400 to 900 years later. So if that is their precedence, if that takes precedence, if that's who their prophet is, if that's what he said and did, and that's what they're going to, that is the latest. So they're taking the latest and making that and elevating it to authority when they should be going back to the original account. Why don't they go back to the Christians? Why don't they go back to the people that were actually there, like Muawiyah and Abdul Malik? The people were actually the caliphs at that time in the 7th century, and look and see what they put on their coins. Look and see what they wrote. Look and see what they called themselves. Look and see that none of these guys were Muslims. They were all Christians. In the 7th century, there were no Muslims that early. So that's why you need to be careful. This historical precedent is a fallacy that Muslims walk into all the time, and we don't hold them accountable. We would never do that with Jesus. We always go back to that which is earliest. If we took their standard and did what they were doing, that means we'd have to go to the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Judas, and the Gospel of Barnabas as our authority. We would never go to those Gospels, those Gnostic Gospels. Why? Because they're written later. And since they're written later, they cannot be trusted. We want to go to the eyewitness accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, or the ones who got it, the Tabi'un who got it from the eyewitnesses. We want to go to those people that were actually there, saw what they saw, wrote what they saw, and wrote what they heard. That's why this historical precedent is a huge fallacy that Muslims are just waking up to, and we want to help them out in this.
Absolutely. And of course, it's kind of interesting when it comes to Christianity, they want to take you back to what did Jesus physically says, and how come you're relying on the writing of so and so and the writing of so and so, even though they were eyewitness accounts. But it's just interesting, really, how they do things like this. And you're absolutely correct. If we are going to look now at available evidence for these standard Islamic narratives, sources, you're going to have all kind of problems with that, because
Huge
they
problems.
are later accounts, not closer to the events themselves.
And thank God we don't have this problem. We throw out the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Judas, and certainly the Gospel of Barnabas, because they are so late. We believe in historical precedents.
Absolutely. And even Jesus himself says in Matthew 5:17, I did not come to abolish the law and the prophets. I came to fulfill them. So he is taking us back to the original source. He's not adding something new. He's not changing something that is in existence, So that principle, of course, is extremely important. Next time, looks like we're going to be talking about something called cyclical argument.
Cyclical arguments next.
Wonderful. Thank you, brother. Thank you, everyone. This is Fadi. God bless. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. And ring the bell so you will be notified when we release new content. Our mission is to reach Muslims with the gospel of Jesus Christ and help Christians engage with their Muslim neighbors. If you want to join us in this life-changing work, please support us on patreon.com/CIRA International, or just click on the link below.